Prepare for a rant. That's a good time. One of my favorite romances that I've ever read. The first surprise was that I picked it up to begin with. This was garbage. I've read books that I've been spoiled for and still enjoyed them. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel if you're new. Today we are doing the video that I have most dreaded filming as of late. And nobody's asked for, but it feels like my channel is incomplete without, and that is every book I've read from January 1st to April 30th. So this is going to be a huge long 4-month wrap up. We have 27 books to talk about, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about more in a single wrap-up video just from 1 month of reading. I think that if you guys have stuck around with me for a long time, you know that things have changed, and one of those is that I work full-time now, and it's been an adjustment to say the least. Part of that is learning how to post and film and incorporate that into my already full schedule, which I don't mind doing because I love this. It's important to me. It's not something that I want to give up or like let go of. The other part of that is trying to balance in time to read, and what does that look like now? Maybe it means more audiobooks or graphic novels, etc. The like, you get it. I've always hated filming wrap-ups. I don't like it. I don't know why. It feels like a chore. It feels like an assignment. That's really what it is. It feels like a big, long book report. And I love talking about the books that I've read and want to recommend to you guys, etc., etc. But wrap-ups, especially when I've read a lot of books, no thank you. Let's just get through the first 4 months of my reading. In case anybody's wondering why I film wrap-ups, even though I hate filming wrap-ups, it's because I like looking back and having the videos to be like, oh, I read this book this month and these were all of my feelings about it in the moment. So during the first part of the year, I'll link my weekly reading vlogs because those are also a good way to keep up to date with everything that I've been reading. But during the first 3 or 4 days of the year, I was in quarantine because I had COVID. All good. I'm okay. My significant other is okay. Everybody's okay. But I did a lot of reading because I didn't really have anything else that I could do. So a lot of that was audiobooks. And the first one that I listened to was Finley Donovan is Killing It by El Cosimano, I believe. I gave this one 4 stars. This one is a good old-fashioned mystery with a bunch of hijinks that our main character, Finley Donovan, accidentally gets herself into and doesn't quite know how to weasel her way out of. I really enjoyed this one. I think it's going to be a series that I keep up to date with very regularly because this was just so fun. And spoiler alert, later we'll get to the sequel because I've also read that and really adored it. But basically, to sum up what this one is about, this is about our main character, you guessed it, Finley Donovan, who she is a writer, a divorcee, and a full-time mom. And the writing has kind of taken a back seat because of all the other things that have been going on in her life, and she's dealing with a little bit of writer's block, rightfully so. Her husband has left her and is now engaged to someone else who's younger than him and doesn't like her. And one day when she has a meeting with her editor, she writes romantic suspense novels, for the record. She has her meeting with her editor or her agent or whatever at a Panera, and someone overhears them talking about it and they think that she's a hit woman. So they hire her to take her husband out of the picture. And Finley doesn't know what to do about it. She's like reading this note and she's like, obviously I can't, somebody, I'll go to jail. This is terrible. And then she continues to read, and there's a whole lot of zeros behind that dollar sign, if you know what I'm saying. I think it's like $50,000 or something like that that she's being offered to dispose of this man. And she's like, let me just see why this woman could possibly want her husband dead. And she looks into it, and it turns out he's like part of this whole mafia. It's a whole big thing. She gets herself into a ton of trouble, but it gives her inspiration for her novel and kicks things back up again. So I really enjoyed this. It was very fun. Like I said, I loved the banter between Finley and her nanny. It was incredible, top tier. 4 out of 5 stars to this one. The second book that I read was To Sir with Love by Lauren Lane. This one is definitely switching gears, but not any less fun in my opinion. This one is just like a classic rom-com feel. If you like You've Got Mail, you'll love this book because I feel like it captured the vibe and entity that movie goes for perfectly. And now my dog is crying because he found out that there are dogs outside, so I will resume shortly. I'm just gonna keep on going because he's being relatively quiet. If you see weird cuts or something, it's likely because Aslan got very, very loud barking at the dogs outside, as he tends to do. To Sir with Love by Lauren Lane. I read Lauren Lane's like New York City romances, I don't know, but I really enjoyed this entire series, and when I saw that this one had released, I was like, okay, I have to read it. It looks so good, looks so fun. I don't know what else to be reading right now, and I could use just a lighthearted good time. And to those of you who have never read a Lauren Lane book before, Lauren Lane very much writes the very sweet romances. It doesn't mean that there aren't like hate to enemies, because obviously the You've Got Mail trope very heavily leans into enemies to lovers, not in like they hate each other, want to kill each other, but businesses are contradicting and they're enemies in that way. But that doesn't mean that they can't be friends. I'm sure you all know how You've Got Mail works, but I've seen a lot of people getting upset about the like misuse of enemies to lovers, hate to love, rivals to lovers, all of those tropes. So I'm trying to justify why I call this enemies to lovers, even though it's not an extreme transformation, if that makes sense. It's not like a full 180 type of deal, but I still think it qualifies. Her romances are very sweet, and they're also fade to black. It's just like a touch here, maybe a kiss at the end, and it really just warms your heart. So if you need a break from the smut, not that there's anything wrong with it, because smut is fun, smut is a good time, and I'm absolutely not shaming anybody who likes it or dislikes it. Like, do your own thing, read your own books. I could care less. If you're wanting a break from that, or it's not really your thing to begin with, I highly recommend her books because they just honestly feel like a breath of fresh air. They really do. So this one is about a small shop owner in New York City. She owns a champagne shop, and it's like Bubbles and More or something. It's going out of business because a lot of other shops are popping up around New York City, but she really doesn't want to let it go. It's something that her mom really loved and her dad put a lot of effort into, so she's very reluctant to let it go for all of those reasons. It's very sentimental to her. So she continually gets offers from this bigger company who's trying to buy out the space. And she's like, no, like, I don't want any of your money. You can offer me as much as you want. I'm not taking it. Absolutely not. And so one day she goes down to the office to the person who has been sending her these letters. I don't remember either of the main characters' names, to be honest. I'm terrible. But she goes to his office and she's like, you are a horrible human being. Like, you're just this corporate, I'm not like going with your corporate agenda. Absolutely not. This is like a family-owned business. He was like, yeah, mine's a family-owned business too. She was like, okay, but you're a millionaire. Like, it's kind of a different thing. And she's like, I'm sure you don't even remember any of the people's businesses that you've purchased because you literally don't care and you're soulless. And he's like, actually, I remember the lady who owned the pizza shop and all of her 4 children, and I frequent her like latest thing. And he just keeps rattling things off, and she's like, oh, I stand corrected. He is redeemable. He's not the soul-sucking, like, terrible human being. She just views him that way because of their business conflict. It's literally the sweetest thing ever. I loved it so much. It's probably one of my favorite Lauren Lane books, and I need to read Made in Manhattan, which is her most recent release, as soon as possible, because just talking about To Sir with Love is bringing me so much joy. The next one is Love at First Fight by Carrie Aarons. This one is one that I bought in the summer of 2020, I think. I saw, I think, Olivia from Olivia's Reads on Instagram. I'll have her handle linked below. I saw her read this with one of her friends and give it like 3 stars, and it just honestly had a cute cover and an awesome premise. It's, again, enemies to lovers. They hate each other, and they end up at this same beach house together. The guy is the girl's ex-boyfriend's best friend. So she was dating this one guy, and this guy that she ends up with, our hero, was his best friend, and he ends up breaking up with her. But she has already spent so much money on this trip that she decides to take it anyway. So she's stuck in this house with like 4 other people and him, and she's like, this is miserable. These are all of his friends and he really, really hates me. And then over the summer they develop this really, really sweet relationship. I loved it so much, and I need to pick up more by Carrie Aaron's wonderful, wonderful self-published romance if you're looking for more. I really liked this one, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I think this is my first 5-star of the year, was Gyo by Junji Ito. Maybe I'll switch sides. I don't know. Editing me will decide. Gyo by Junji Ito. This one is his shortest of the editions that are like black and white with a spot of red on them. And this one is about a smelly fish and how it ends up taking over the town. It was frightening, so horrific and gory and gross, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I read it on sprints. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was absolutely amazing, and it was actually gifted to me by one of you guys, which makes it all the more special, and I'm so happy that could be my experience. I'm so glad that one of you guys like gifted me a book and I ended up loving it as opposed to hating it, because that would just feel very weird and I would not like that experience. But I'm glad that it was the opposite and I loved it because it was so good. It's my favorite Junji Ito that I've ever read, and it inspired me to collect all of his books, which I now have, and now I need to read them all. Then to follow that up, because I was like, well, I loved that one, I need to read more, I read Deserter, also by Junji Ito. I unfortunately did not like this one as much. I don't seem to love Junji Ito's short story collections as much as I love his longer format books. So this one ended up getting a 3 out of 5 stars. I can't remember any of the distinct stories, so I apologize, but like I said, I'll have all of my vlogs that I've done so far this year in the description below, because hopefully that will give you some more insight if you're interested in more of my in-depth thoughts on any of these books. So those will all be linked in the description. I'm gonna hate myself for saying that later, but it's okay. But yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. Wasn't my favorite. I probably liked some stories, maybe loved one, and really didn't jive with some others, because that tends to be how that works for me. Then I read Lethal Bayou Beauty by Jana DeLeon. This is the second book in the Misfortune series. The first book is Louisiana Longshot. This is about a CIA agent who has a bounty on her head because a mission went awry, so now she has to hide out in this small town in Louisiana called Sinful. And it turns out that there's a lot more action happening in this town than anybody anticipated, and a lot of that is murder. She ends up kind of trying to solve the case on her own because she is a CIA agent and she's a little bit bored, along with these 2 older ladies. Fortune, Gertie, and Idabelle are the ideal trio, to be honest with you. I loved this and I am so excited to continue on with the series. This is the second book, like I said, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars as well. It is a cozy mystery series and the vibes are immaculate. Then we switched it over to a little bit more of a hardcore thriller, and I read They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. This one is a gender swapped version of Dexter, and our main character, well, it's dual POV, but the professor character is secretly a serial killer who takes care of, if you will, bad men. And by bad men, I mean men that have SA'd other women, or even gone further than that she has crossed paths with. And it's on, like, her agenda, morally gray, her intentions stark white, in my opinion. I really loved this book. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I really want to read more of Lane Fargo's work. This was so fun, and I didn't see the twists coming. It was so good, and it kept me on the edge of my seat the whole way through. So I loved it, and it just, reinstated my love of thrillers and justified how many I bought last year without reading. Then, because I was on a new releases kick, I read Where the Drowned Girls Go by Seanan McGuire. This is the 7th book, I think, in the Wayward Children series, which is one of my favorite series of all time. I think you guys know that at this point. I didn't love this one, and I was so sad about it because I was really looking forward to it. I think that there were still important quotes, and it's still a beautiful story, and I will still read every single book that comes out. I just didn't love it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and that's not a bad rating at all. It was just disappointing given how much I've loved every other book that has come out in this series. I still loved our main character and the journey that she went through and all of the self-discovery and self-love that she finally found throughout the course of this book. It was beautiful, and as with every Seanan McGuire book, I love the messages, but the actual storyline in this one was just kind of meh, unfortunately, for me. I know other people have loved it, and I love that for them. I wish that I had also loved it. Then we have another 3-star book, and that is Lovesickness by Junji Ito. I didn't realize I had read so many Junji Ito books so far this year, but apparently kind of killing it. This one, like I said, also a 3 out of 5 stars. Didn't love every single story in this. They were just kind of meh to me. Not bad, not the worst thing I've ever read by any means, and the art was still beautiful, and I'm happy that I own it, but just kind of middle of the road, as we established with Deserter and other books that I have read by him when it comes to other short stories, I should say, that I've read by him. The next one completely took me by surprise, and that is Ice Planet Barbarians. The first surprise was that I picked it up to begin with because the title, I literally consulted in the gals group chat and I was like, what do we have here? Is it worth it? Rylan, you've read it. I'm looking at you. Would I like it? Should I even try? And Rylan said, yes. So I did it. And I gave it 4 stars. I really liked this. I wasn't anticipating it. It was so bizarre and wonderful. And honestly, enough plot and character development together that it was a really great book. And I'm so glad that I read it. And I will be I will be reading the rest of the series, but only as the special edition covers come out. I read it so quickly, it was just a good break from reality. Then, because I was on some weird KU rabbit hole journey adventure games we play by Dana Isley, every once in a while I'll watch a Princess of Paperback video and be like, what smart recommendations does she have for me today? Honestly, she never disappoints. I think I watched her favorites video and she said that this was one of her favorite books that she had read all year, and I was like, let me check it out. Let me see what it's about. And I did, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was very fun. It was hands in the air, don't know what to do, wow, can't believe this is happening, but kind of glad we're here, that kind of a time. It is dark. Definitely look up content warnings. But I liked it, and I want to read more from Dana Isley. In fact, I did read more from Dana Isley. I didn't know what to expect, but this was still somehow not what I was expecting. It's just a short little, like, 60-page novella that you go, oh, switching gears. Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. And it was devastating, and I cried. It was emotional, to say the least. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars because yes, it made me cry, but it wasn't like ugly love hitting home kind of cry. It was beautiful and very true to Colleen Hoover though, and I really loved it. It's one of my favorite Colleen Hoover books. It's so emotional. Let me just show you how many tabs I have. This is how the book had me. Yeah, it was a lot. I annotated so much in this book. The letters that were included, don't even get me started. I'm hormonal and I will cry. I also realized that I started the beginning of this video giving synopses, and I definitely stopped like the 3rd book in, so let me kickstart that back up again. Reminders of Him is about Kenna and Ledger. Kenna has just been released from prison, and you don't fully, like, the beginning is kind of vague about like why she went to prison and everything that happened to get her there. But when she was in prison, she ended up giving birth to a little girl. While she was in prison, she ended up giving birth to a little girl named Diem and lost custody of her, kind of relating to the reason that she ended up there. And when she gets out, her only mission is to find her daughter and just make some contact, because the father of her daughter is no longer in the picture in a pretty permanent way. It's all she has left of Scotty, who is the ex-boyfriend and father of Diem. So when she stumbles into town, she goes to this bar and meets Ledger Ward, thinks that he's so handsome, he thinks she's so beautiful, and they're very attracted to each other, but she doesn't want anyone to know her true identity, so she gives them her middle name so that nobody like picks up on who she really is, because she's been gone for so long, but her name is still very recognizable. As the book progresses, you find out that Ledger has a connection to Diem because he was Scotty's best friend. The book is really about Kenna and Ledger forming a connection and trying to make their way, make it so that Kenna can have that contact that she deeply desires with her daughter in whatever form that looks like, but also not completely damage the relationships and Kenna's future, because if her future is ruined and she can't provide for her daughter anyway, then not what's the point, because everybody deserves a life, and that's not at all what I'm saying, but like, how is that helping you get to your daughter anyway? You know what I'm saying? Like, it just seems counterintuitive. This book was heartbreaking. Also look up content warnings, and I loved it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was so good, and I would definitely reread it. I'll probably reread the quotes very soon because I love doing that with annotated books. 4.5, so good. So glad I read it. What am I doing with my arm? Then I went back to Dana Isley and read Secrets We Hunt because I just needed a good fun time after the heartbreak that Reminders of Him caused me. This one I didn't love as much as Games We Play. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It was equally fun and a good time, and I would still continue on in this series. I just didn't love it as much, didn't jive with it. It was just kind of meh for me. So 3 out of 5 stars, not bad. Still would recommend it. The concept was more intriguing, but the execution, in my opinion, wasn't as great as the first one. Then another Junji Ito. Holy crap. I don't even know how many are on this list. I think this is the last one. I read Fragments of Horror by Junji Ito. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. This is another short story collection, but I definitely liked this one more as per my rating. I honestly couldn't tell you which short stories are in this one, but apparently the short stories in this one were better. Then I wanted a little bit of romance that was gonna make me feel good and not like put me through the ringer again. So I read A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. This was so much fun, and I need to read more of Alyssa Cole's romance. I loved the atmosphere more than anything, and getting to know all of the politics and the intrigue. I loved the romance. It was great, but that was honestly secondary for me in this book, and I'm being reminded again that I need to go back and read more Alyssa Cole, because this romance was top tier. One of my favorite romances that I've ever read, to be honest with you. It was so good, and I loved our main character and how like strong-willed she was. I love reading about driven women with full careers that they care about and they want to make a difference, and they don't care what anybody else says or how much time they have to sacrifice in order to make their dreams happen. It's just, I think it's the type of woman that I want to be, so I read about them in hopes that something transfers, like osmosis, you know, even though that's with water and that's not how it works, but if you don't tell anybody, I won't. And I think I told you we'd get back to this one. I read Finley Donovan, Knocks 'Em Dead. This is the sequel, but we're still following the same characters, still kind of the same general idea. It's just a different bounty. This one is her husband, ex-husband, father of her children. Kind of puts her in a tricky spot. So yeah, obviously can't give too much away about it because it is the sequel, but it was a good time. I think this one I liked slightly less than the other one, so it's like a 3.754 stars, and the other one's like a 4.54 star read. Not as great as the sequel, but I still really enjoyed it, and I would, like I said, read more. Prepare for a rant. I don't normally rant about books on my channel. I don't like doing it. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like having negative opinions about books public. I freaking hated this book, Every Value Break by Peter Swanson. Don't know if I'll ever read a Peter Swanson book again because this was garbage. To anyone who enjoyed this book or enjoys this book, likes it, that's amazing. I wish that I had, but I hated it. I gave this 1 star. Yeah, my review on Goodreads is brutal. I wouldn't recommend going to look at it. Pretty sure I called it a waste of time. Sorry, I know that's mean. I just don't get why people like it. Like, this was supposed to be like a mystery thriller, and it was thrilling for the first half of the book until I realized that the mystery was going nowhere and it stopped being thrilling, and I also stopped caring. This is my least favorite book that I have read so far this year. It was terrible. I'm just gonna continue to use words synonymous to bad. I just don't get it. Like, if you've read it, it was exactly what she thought the whole time, but that was never explained. I'm gonna put like spoilers up here so I can kind of say in more detail what I'm talking about. I wouldn't recommend that you read it, but if for some reason you still want to, then skip ahead. Okay, here's my thing. It's an island, right, for men who do terrible things to women, and they want to get their revenge on these women that have somehow caused them trauma in some way, shape, or form. And like, she wasn't sure if she loved him. Okay, yeah, like she shouldn't have married him. Got it. Is that worthy of killing her? Don't think so. Absolutely don't think so. No, it's literally not. And I understand that these men are like psychotic, Looney Tune, need to go to a psych ward. No shame. I've been there. Honestly, I don't even think a psych ward would help. Probably just prison. Yeah. Like, they're men with too much money. And what about it? Like, they have this spooky island with no electricity and no way to call people. But like, when was the island formed? No details were given. It was just like, what was the point? Biggest waste of time of my life. I hate that I even read this book. Yeah. Like, the whole time I was like, okay, like, what is this island? And it was literally her first thought when she got to the island, that it was just this disconnected place. There were only men there to come visit, and then like some people brought their wives to get rid of them unsuspected. She couldn't trust anybody. It was her first thought. That's not a mystery thriller. That, my friends, is boring. I'm sorry. I just hated it. I hated it so much. I need to stop talking about it. If I could take back reading one book, it would be this one. No, just no to this whole thing. Absolutely not. Please. This is a bad book. Then I read another bad book, which led to my reading slump, and that was Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valenti, I believe. This, okay, I understand that this was supposed to be a thriller with a good reveal and everything. And like, maybe it was. Maybe to some people it was. And I love that for you guys. That's great. But I was spoiled. Like, my own fault. I watched the spoiler warning thing that I shouldn't have watched. But I will also say, I've read books that I've been spoiled for and still enjoyed them. I gave this one 2 stars. Then I really switched gears because I was like, okay, I need something to get out of this reading slump. Maybe poetry will do the trick. I read Unlock Your Storybook Heart by Amanda Lovelace. I gave this one 4 stars. It was good. I enjoyed it, but didn't really do the trick that I was really looking for. And that's okay. That's okay. It was good. Not my favorite of her collections by any means, but I will reread it, and there were some really solid poems in there. I think that the first half, for me, resonated more and was stronger than the second half, but in my opinion, poetry is subjective, and that is what I base the ratings off of. So if you like the second half more or you love the whole thing, I'm so glad. Then I was like, okay, another new release, a romance that I've been anticipating. Maybe this will do the trick. So I read Count Your Lucky Stars by Alexandria Bellefleur. Can we just take a minute to talk about this cover? Just a moment of silence, please. Beautiful. Thank you. It was so good. This cover, just, yeah, it's everything that I love. This is, I don't know what the series is called, but it's a romance series that dabbles with astrology, and there are like little excerpts of like, here's a crossword based on your astrological sign, or like each astrological sign's favorite tea, or like morning routine. I don't know, they're just like little fun things sprinkled throughout, and I really enjoyed that. This one takes place between Margot and Olivia. I really enjoyed this one. Olivia, it's like, this book is a grumpy sunshine trope, and it's also female. If you are looking for that, since I know Pride Month is coming up, I really recommend this entire series. So in this one, Margot is the grumpy and Olivia is the sunshine. The only thing that I didn't really love was the third act conflict, just because I'm a person who likes to think carefully about their words, which is why so much of my videos are cut out, because I'm literally sitting there like this, trying to think about like what I'm gonna say next, so that I say exactly what I mean and what I want. And I know that like not everybody says what they mean all of the time, and they don't always use the right words, and that's totally fine, and this was realistic in that aspect, I guess. I just didn't like it. It didn't sit well with me. I understood the purpose, and I'm not like hating on the book for this. I still gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, so I still really enjoyed it. That was just my only qualm with this book. I'm trying to think of other tropes that it had. There was grumpy sunshine, second chance romance. Yeah, that's really all I can think of off the top of my head. Really enjoyed it. It's the third book in the series. They're all very fun. The first one's a Pride and Prejudice retelling, and that's a good time. Loved that the characters didn't have to compromise anything to be with each other, and that was like, that idea was reinforced throughout the entire book. Like, you don't have to compromise yourself and your wants or needs for the sake of anybody else or to make anybody else happy. I really enjoyed that part being implemented. Why did I say it like that? I really couldn't tell you. Then I read Not My Type by Evie Mitchell. One of you guys commented a while ago when I posted my goals video for the year and said that I wanted to read more diversely, that in my like list of diversity that I should be like looking for, I should include disability representation, and it was very ableist and ignorant of me to not. So first and foremost, I apologize for that, but you're absolutely right, and I did want to do that. So I saw this one on Scribd and I was like, this sounds like a fun time, and then I read the synopsis and I was like, this sounds like a really fun time. So this one is about, I just remembered that he called her Rainbow, so I'm gonna call her Rainbow. I'm sorry. This is about Rainbow who has this podcast where she is a sexologist, and she gives people advice, not necessarily like tips and tricks to spice it up in the bedroom, but how to kind of regain your power and confidence in intimate situations and make yourself feel more comfortable with maybe experimenting something or reclaiming things that are yours and have always been yours after a trauma has maybe taken them away from you, seemingly. So she really focuses on that, and for that she got a comment / question about rope play, and she always wants to be completely candid with her audience, and so in order to give advice, she thought, what better way to give advice than to have experienced it first. So she goes to this rigger named Jay, I think, takes a class with him to learn more about it, and end up doing a podcast together, and through that they form a connection. And the synopsis says like, she wants love and he's like not one for commitment, which he knows, so he won't like date her or do anything with her outside of kind of like educating her like the rope play, but obviously they end up falling in love and it's super freaking cute. I gave that one 4 stars. I don't know if I said that or not, but 4 stars. Then I read one of my favorite romances of the year, and that was It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I'm falling again. I've been standing for too long. Maybe I should sit. All right, I've been standing and sitting for so long that one of those things had to change. Did I say standing and sitting? I meant standing and speaking. It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. 5 out of 5 stars. This one is like a fun spin on Schitt's Creek. It has that grumpy sunshine trope. We are following Piper, who gets sent out to this town. I don't remember what it's called, but she is sent out to this town by her stepfather after she has had one too many mishaps, and just he thinks that she needs to learn to respect money and hard work because she's never really had to face challenges with either of those things. She's had everything handed to her, and so her stepfather sends her to this small little town called Westport in like Washington, I think, and there she meets Brendan Taggart, who is the captain of a ship. At first, he's not very impressed with her at all. He's like, you are just some dumb girl who obviously doesn't value hard work or money, and you don't know what you're doing with your life. Not a fan. And she proves throughout the novel, not only to him and everyone around her, but also to herself, that she's a very compassionate person and she has more to give than just like Instagram selfies, and that she does actually really like working, and she comes to learn the value of money and how fulfilling not only working can be, but also helping people for no reason other than they need it and you're available. She forms so many connections throughout the book that are absolutely wonderful to see, and how she blossoms and how those people blossom after they've interacted with her. It's just so good. So good. Loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. All of it was amazing. It made me so happy. It had me laughing at points. It was so good. Then I wanted something quick again, so I read Breakable Things by Katie Wismer. This was another one of my most anticipated releases. I have really enjoyed Katie Wismer's past 2 poetry collections. Unfortunately, this one fell a little bit flat for me, purely because, as I've mentioned, I really like poetry that I can relate to, and this one didn't have a ton of it. I think that Katie was writing it for a stage of her life that I have just not experienced yet, and that's like totally fine. Everybody has their own experiences and that's cool, but there just wasn't a ton that I could relate to in this. That's not to say that the quality was bad. It just, I'm not in the same season of life that she was in when she wrote this, so didn't jive with it. But I still highly recommend this one to people who enjoy modern poetry. I think it's very well written and it's beautiful, and she has a lot of things to say that I think are worth reading or hearing. The next book that I read was The Princess Trap by Talia Hibbert. This one I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. This was a royalty romance with fake dating tropes and forced proximity that I just absolutely loved. It was so good. I loved Cherry as a main character. This book was everything. It made me so happy, and there are some pretty good smut scenes in this as well if you're looking for them. I think that this one I would place as like my 3rd favorite Talia Hibbert book, and she's definitely solidified herself as one of my favorite romance authors, and I need to own these books desperately. This book and like the other books that I read by her, because oh my goodness, they're so freaking good, and this one was no exception. This is about a girl named Cherry and a guy, I can't remember his name, but he's a prince, I think, or a duke or something, some royal title, and he's kind of ostracized from his family, and one day paparazzi finds him and Cherry like kissing or holding hands or something, and he has to play it off due to a previous scandal that he was involved in, that he and Cherry are engaged and it's a serious relationship, and Cherry has to stay with him, which she's not too pleased about, in order to really sell that and also have the protection from his like royal security, since she is in such a spotlight now. I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, it was so fun, had me laughing, also had me blushing like crazy. And like I said, like Talia Hibbert is one of my favorite romance authors ever at this point. So then I read Dating Dr. Dill because I was just on a romance kick. This one is by Nisha. I don't remember her last name. I'm so sorry, but you can see it on the cover of the book. This one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. I listened to it on audiobook, so the things that I've seen people in reviews complain about, I didn't pay as much attention to. This one is a Taming of the Shrew retelling, and I didn't think that I loved The Taming of the Shrew, and I still don't know that I do, but I really enjoyed this one. In this, our heroine is a lawyer who works for like a nonprofit or something, and our hero is a doctor who's trying to open up this like care facility, and they're both running out of money. They like have these big things that they're looking to pay for. His is like his care facility, and hers is the house that she has grown up in and helped design with her mother, who has since passed, that her father has decided to sell since it's just too much for him to keep up with now that he is retired. So in order for that to happen, their parents are like, if you get married, I'll give you this huge sum of money and you'll end up having enough to get what you want to get. There are a whole like bunch of complex things that happen. hate to love, enemies to lovers. I didn't love the like message on love in this one. It really felt like, from the hero's perspective, they were trying to sell you on the fact that love is bad and like you shouldn't believe in it, and I didn't like that. And I didn't love that like he didn't fully seem to change his mind by the end of it. So this book is honestly probably more like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I still enjoyed it, and I still would read more by this author, but I think I just didn't love him, and that made it difficult for me. Like, it like mentally messed with my head for a solid 2 weeks after I read this book. Then I read The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adam. This is a sports romance between an NFL player and one of his best friends growing up. So it's friends to lovers, like childhood friends, best friends to lovers, fake dating. This one is a fade to black romance, so there's a good amount of tension and build-up, but if you're not into these smut scenes, I would recommend this one. I enjoyed it. It was good. It was a very fun time. It made me feel good while I was reading it, but it's not like the most memorable thing that I've ever read. And I also didn't love how much the heroine had to convince herself that the hero could possibly love her after years and years of their friendship. Like, even just platonic love, of course he loves you, like, duh. So that wasn't my favorite, but it was still very cute, and I would recommend this one. I think you guys can tell that I'm tired of talking. The last book that I read in the month of April, and for this video, we're finally at the end, was Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. I want to do a whole series vlogging my experience reading Sophie Lark's books, with each focusing on one series at a time. So that will be coming hopefully soon. Brutal Prince is enemies to lovers. It's a mafia romance between Ada Gallo and Callum. I don't remember his last name, but this one was very fun. Like I said, it was enemies to lovers. Arranged marriage is a trope in this one. It's very dark, so look up content warnings, but this was such a good time. I ended up flying through this, and I did not expect to do that. So I need to get back to the sequel as soon as possible so that I can keep that video going. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars, mostly because I just read it so much faster than I was anticipating to, and it very much took me by surprise in that I didn't expect to love it as nearly as much as I did. We're at the end. Those are the 27 books that I read from January to April, and I'm very much looking forward to not having to film this again, so like hopefully all of this footage works. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry my synopses and reviews kind of got sloppy at the end. I was just so tired of talking. So I'm gonna go lay down and not talk anymore for quite a while, but I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know any of your thoughts on any of these books, if you've read them or not. I love you all so much. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I really hope to see you all in my next one. Bye, guys.